The blood smeared across the marble floor told her everything she needed to know about her new employer before she ever saw his face. Marianne Spencer kept her eyes lowered as the head housekeeper, a stern-faced woman named Mrs. Caldwell, led her through the grand entrance hall of the Thornwood estate. The mansion loomed in the heart of the city, hidden behind iron gates and ancient oak trees that seemed to swallow the streetlights whole. From the outside, it looked like any other historic property the wealthy used as status symbols. From the inside, it was a throne room. "You understand your condition makes you uniquely suited for this position," Mrs. Caldwell said, her voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. She didn't bother looking back to see if Marianne followed. His Majesty values silence above all else. A deaf servant cannot repeat what she cannot hear. Marianne nodded, keeping her expression carefully blank. The hearing aid tucked invisibly in her ear transmitted every word with perfect clarity, but Mrs. Caldwell didn't need to know that. The Vampire Intelligence Agency had spent 3 months preparing her for this assignment, teaching her sign language, coaching her on the mannerisms of the deaf, ensuring her cover was airtight. The VIA had been tracking Lord Konstantin Draevor for decades, watching as he consolidated power among the vampire courts, waiting for an opportunity to get someone inside his inner sanctum. That opportunity was Marianne. "His Majesty keeps unusual hours," Mrs. Caldwell continued as they climbed a sweeping staircase. "You will clean his private chambers between sunset and midnight. You will not make eye contact. You will not attempt communication unless absolutely necessary, and then only through the written notes we've provided. Is this understood?" Marianne nodded again, letting her fingers move in the signs she'd practiced until they were second nature. "I understand. I am grateful for this opportunity." Mrs. Caldwell's mouth tightened. "See that you remember your place. The last girl who forgot herself didn't leave this house alive." A thrill of fear ran down Marianne's spine, but she kept it from her face. The VIA had warned her. Konstantin Draevor wasn't just any vampire. He was the vampire king of the Eastern Territories, ruler of 7 courts, commander of an army that operated in the shadows of human cities. He was ancient, powerful, and utterly ruthless, and somewhere in his private chambers, he kept records of every vampire bloodline, every safe house, every planned expansion into human territory. The VIA needed those records. Humanity needed to know what was coming. Mrs. Caldwell stopped before an ornate door carved with intricate patterns that seemed to move in the candlelight. "His private suite, you begin tonight. Do not disappoint me." She pressed a key into Marianne's palm and walked away, her footsteps fading into the vast silence of the mansion. Marianne stood alone in the hallway, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was it. Years of training, months of preparation, all leading to this moment. She slipped the key into the lock and turned it, pushing the door open with trembling hands. The room beyond stole her breath. It was enormous, decorated in shades of deep crimson and black. Heavy velvet curtains blocked out every trace of natural light. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with volumes that looked older than countries. A massive 4-poster bed dominated one corner, its dark silk sheets rumpled as though recently used. And everywhere there were papers. Documents spread across a mahogany desk, maps pinned to boards, ledgers stacked on side tables. Marianne's pulse quickened. This was better than she'd hoped. She pulled out the small camera disguised as a compact mirror and began photographing everything she could reach, working quickly, systematically. The VIA had given her a month to gather intelligence before extraction. She intended to make every second count. She was so focused on her work that she didn't hear the door open behind her. "How curious," a voice said, smooth as silk and cold as winter. "A deaf servant who responds to sounds she cannot hear." Marianne spun around, the compact slipping from her nerveless fingers. The man standing in the doorway was the most beautiful and terrifying thing she had ever seen. Tall, impossibly tall, with skin as pale as fresh snow and hair that fell to his shoulders in waves of pure white. His eyes were the color of frozen lakes, sharp and ancient and knowing. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her apartment, tailored to perfection over a lean, powerful frame. Everything about him screamed predator. Lord Konstantin Draevor, the Vampire King, smiled at her with teeth that were just a fraction too sharp. "I dropped my compact," Marianne signed frantically, letting panic show on her face because panic was exactly what an innocent deaf girl would feel. "I didn't know you were there. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. How fascinating that you apologize for something you claim not to have heard." Konstantin moved into the room with fluid grace, closing the door behind him. "Tell me, little liar, who sent you? The Council of Bloodlines, the Northern Courts? Or perhaps the humans have finally grown bold enough to send spies into my home?" Marianne's mind raced. The compact had fallen face up. He would see the camera lens. He would know. She did the only thing she could think of. She lunged for it, hoping to destroy the evidence before he could examine it too closely. She never got close. Konstantin moved faster than her eyes could follow, snatching the compact from the floor and catching her wrist in one smooth motion. His grip was iron, unyielding, yet somehow gentle enough not to bruise. He pulled her close, studying her face with those unsettling pale eyes. "Interesting," he murmured. "Your pulse is racing, your pupils are dilated, you're terrified, yet you still tried to reach this device. Loyalty or fear of failure, I wonder?" "Please," Marianne whispered, abandoning the pretense. "Please, I have a family. They said they would protect my sister if I— Coercion then." Something shifted in Konstantin's expression, a flash of what might have been anger. "The Via has grown desperate if they're threatening children. Tell me everything, and I may let you live." "I can't," Marianne's voice broke. "They'll kill her. They'll kill Madison." It wasn't entirely a lie. The Via had implied there would be consequences for failure, though they'd never directly threatened her younger sister. But Konstantin didn't need to know that. Let him think her sympathetic, desperate, trapped. Anything but the trained operative she actually was. Konstantin's eyes narrowed. For a long moment he simply looked at her, his grip on her wrist never loosening. Then to her shock he released her and stepped back. "You will continue in your role as my servant," he said quietly. "You will clean my chambers, attend to your duties, and maintain your pretense of deafness. And when the Via contacts you for reports, you will tell them exactly what I instruct you to tell them." Marianne stared at him. "You're using me as a double agent? I'm giving you a chance to save your sister while serving my purposes. Consider it a mercy I'm not obligated to grant." Konstantin moved to his desk, settling into the chair with regal ease. "The Via believes they're hunting me. They have no idea that they're walking into a trap I've spent 50 years setting. Your presence here will help me spring it. And if I refuse, then I'll snap your neck and send your body back to them as a message." He said it without emotion, as casually as someone might discuss the weather. "But I don't think you'll refuse. You're terrified, yes, but you're also intelligent. You understand that I'm offering you the only path that keeps both you and your sister alive." He was right. Marianne hated that he was right, but she couldn't deny the cold logic. If she refused, she died. If she died, the Via would assume she'd been compromised and Madison might be deemed a security risk. But if she played along, if she fed the Via whatever information Konstantin wanted them to have— "How do I know you won't kill me anyway?" she asked. Konstantin's smile was like winter frost. "You don't. You'll simply have to trust that I keep my word. Unlike your employers, I don't hide behind noble causes while threatening children." Marianne wanted to argue, to defend the Via, but the words stuck in her throat, because he wasn't entirely wrong. The agency had recruited her with promises of protection and purpose, but they'd made it clear that failure wasn't an option, that her sister's safety depended on her success. "What do you want me to tell them?" she asked finally. "Nothing yet. First, I need to understand exactly what they've told you to look for." Konstantin gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit, we have much to discuss, you and I." Marianne sat, her mind whirling with possibilities. This wasn't how the mission was supposed to go. She was supposed to be invisible, unnoticed, gathering intelligence until extraction. Now she was sitting across from the Vampire King himself, caught in a web of competing loyalties and lies. "Tell me your real name," Konstantin said. "Not the false identity in your papers." "Marianne Spencer." "Marianne." He tested the name, his accent turning it into something lyrical. "How long have you worked for the Via?" 3 years. "This is my first field assignment." "Of course it is. They always sacrifice the new ones first." Konstantin leaned back in his chair, studying her with unnerving intensity. "What did they tell you about me? That you're planning an expansion into human territories. That you're consolidating vampire bloodlines under your rule. That you're dangerous and need to be stopped." The words came easier than they should have. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it was the strange sense that lying to this creature would be far more dangerous than honesty. "All true," Konstantin acknowledged, "though not for the reasons they imagine." "Tell me, Marianne, what do you know about the Bloodright Accords?" She shook her head. "Nothing. That wasn't in my briefing." No, it wouldn't have been. The Via is excellent at gathering surface information and utterly incompetent at understanding the deeper currents of vampire politics. Konstantin rose from his chair and moved to one of the maps pinned to the wall. 200 years ago, the vampire courts agreed to a treaty. We would limit our numbers, restrict our feeding, and avoid human attention in exchange for being allowed to exist in the shadows. The humans who knew of us governments, certain military organizations, would leave us alone so long as we kept to our territory. He traced a finger along the map, highlighting territories marked in red. But over the last century, those territories have shrunk. Human cities expand, technology makes hiding more difficult, and the Via created to monitor the treaty has slowly shifted from observers to hunters. They've killed more vampires in the last decade than in the previous 100 years combined. Marianne felt cold spreading through her chest. "You're saying the Via broke the treaty first. I'm saying the treaty is dying, and when it finally collapses there will be war. A war that will devastate both our peoples." Konstantin turned to face her, his pale eyes burning with intensity. I'm consolidating power because scattered courts cannot negotiate. I'm planning expansion because if we don't claim territory now, we'll be exterminated later. Everything I do to prevent the slaughter the Via is racing toward. That's Marianne struggled for words. That's a very convenient justification for a power grab. To her surprise, Konstantin laughed. It was a sharp, bitter sound. I've ruled these territories for 3 centuries, girl. If I wanted more power, I would have taken it long ago. I'm trying to save lives, human and vampire both. By using me to feed false information to my handlers. By using you to buy time. The Via is planning a strike on the Winter Court in 6 months. I know this because I have my own spies in their organization. If that strike happens, it will trigger retaliation from every vampire bloodline in the Northern Territories. Thousands will die, and the secret of our existence will be exposed to the entire human world. Chaos, panic, massacres on both sides. Konstantin moved closer, and Marianne found herself unable to look away from his eyes. But if I can feed them information that delays that strike, that makes them second-guess their intelligence, I can create a window for negotiation, for a new treaty, for peace. Why are you telling me this? Marianne whispered. Why not just compel me? I know vampires can do that. Compulsion is crude and temporary. It leaves traces that the Via would detect the moment you returned for debriefing. Konstantin crouched down so they were eye level, his expression unexpectedly earnest. I need you to choose this, Marianne Spencer. I need you to understand what's at stake and decide for yourself which side of history you want to stand on. Marianne's thoughts were in chaos. Everything he said contradicted her training, her briefings, her entire understanding of this mission. But there was a terrible logic to it. She'd seen how the Via operated, their ruthless efficiency, their absolute certainty that vampires were nothing but monsters to be eliminated. She'd never questioned it before. Never thought to ask what the vampires might think about their own survival. I need to think, she said finally. I need time to process this, of course. But while you think, you'll continue your duties here. The Via will expect regular reports. Konstantin straightened, his moment of vulnerability passing. I'll provide you with information to send them. Mostly truth, slightly altered. Enough to keep them satisfied while protecting my real plans. And my sister will remain safe so long as you do exactly as I say. His voice hardened. Betray me and I'll know. The consequences will be unpleasant. It was a threat, clear and simple, but Marianne found she almost respected him for stating it plainly. At least he was honest about what he wanted. The Via had dressed up their coercion in patriotic duty and noble purpose. I understand, she said. Good, now go. Mrs. Caldwell will be wondering what's taking you so long. Konstantin returned to his desk, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. Tomorrow night, we'll begin your real education in vampire politics. If you're to be my spy among the humans, you'll need to understand what you're actually reporting on. Marianne stood on shaking legs and walked to the door. She was halfway through it when Konstantin spoke again. Marianne? One more thing. She looked back. Thank you for not trying to kill me when you realized you were caught. It shows wisdom. I appreciate wisdom in my enemies. I'm not your enemy, Marianne said before she could stop herself. Konstantin's smile was enigmatic. No, I don't think you are. Not anymore. Marianne fled the room, her mind reeling. She'd come here to spy on the Vampire King, to gather intelligence that would help destroy him. Instead, she'd been caught, turned, and left questioning everything she thought she knew about this war in the shadows. And the most terrifying part? She found herself wanting to believe him. The days that followed fell into a strange rhythm. Marianne maintained her cover as a deaf servant, cleaning Konstantin's chambers while Mrs. Caldwell and the other staff watched with suspicious eyes. But after sunset, when the mansion truly came alive with vampire activity, Konstantin would summon her to his study. There, behind locked doors, he taught her. He showed her maps of vampire territories, explaining the complex web of alliances and feuds that govern their society. He introduced her to the concept of bloodlines, ancient families with different strengths and weaknesses, all vying for power and survival. He told her about the hunts, the careful rules that governed vampire feeding to prevent detection. He revealed the existence of the Elder Council, vampires so old they remembered empires that had turned to dust. The Via sees us as monsters, Konstantin said one night, spreading documents across his desk. And some of us are, but most are simply trying to survive in a world that no longer has room for our kind. We didn't choose this existence. We were turned, transformed, given immortality we never asked for and hungers we cannot control. Is it monstrous to fight for the right to exist? Marianne studied the papers, birth records, death records, carefully documented proof of vampires who'd lived for centuries without killing. The Via would say yes. They'd say the risk outweighs any right to survival. And you, what do you say? She met his eyes. Over the past week, she'd grown accustomed to that pale, penetrating gaze. It no longer frightened her the way it had that first night. I say it's more complicated than I was taught. Progress, Konstantin murmured. Tell me, has the VIA made contact yet? They had. 3 days ago, Marianne had received a coded message through the secured phone they'd given her. She was supposed to report her findings, upload the photographs from her compact. She'd sent back the information Konstantin had prepared for her, instead real intelligence about vampire movements, but nothing that would endanger anyone. Details about a trade meeting that had already concluded. Names of vampires who'd already relocated. They're pleased with my access to your chambers, Marianne said. They want more information about the winter court strike you mentioned. Konstantin's expression darkened. Of course they do. Tell them you've seen planning documents, but the dates are unclear. That should buy us another few weeks. In a few weeks, the Elder Council meets. I'll present evidence of the VIA's treaty violations and argue for a unified response. If I can convince them to negotiate rather than retaliate, we might avoid open war. Marianne leaned back in her chair, studying him. You really believe that's possible? Peace between humans and vampires? I have to believe it's possible. The alternative is extinction. Konstantin's voice was soft, almost vulnerable. I've lived for over 500 years, Marianne. I've seen empires rise and fall, watched plague and war reshape the world. I don't want to see another age of darkness, not when there's still hope for something better. 500 years. Marianne tried to wrap her mind around it and failed. To live that long, to carry centuries of memories and losses, she couldn't imagine it. What was it like? She asked impulsively. When you returned? Konstantin was quiet for a long moment. Painful. Terrifying. I was a soldier dying on a battlefield. The vampire who found me offered a choice: death or transformation. I chose life, not understanding what I was agreeing to. His eyes grew distant. I spent the first century hating what I'd become. The next learning to control it. The 3 after that, trying to build something worth preserving. And now I'm tired of war. Tired of watching people I care about die while I endure. Tired of being called a monster by those who've never bothered to know me. He focused on her again, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. You're the first human I've had a real conversation with in decades, Marianne. The first who's looked at me and seen something other than a threat to be eliminated. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest. Marianne felt something shift in her chest, a dangerous warmth spreading through her. This was wrong. He was her target, her assignment. She was supposed to be gathering intelligence, not sympathizing with him, certainly not starting to care. I should go, she said, standing abruptly. Mrs. Caldwell will notice if I stay too long. Of course. Konstantin's expression shuddered, returning to its usual controlled mask. Same time tomorrow? Marianne nodded and escaped into the hallway, her heart pounding. This was getting complicated, more complicated than she'd ever anticipated. She made it halfway to her small room in the servants' quarters before she realized she was being followed. The vampire who stepped from the shadows was everything Konstantin wasn't: brutal where he was elegant, crude where he was refined. Scars marked his pale face, and his white hair was cropped short. He wore leather and chains instead of tailored suits, and his smile showed far too many teeth. So you're the little human making our king soft, he said, his voice a growl. Interesting. Marianne's training kicked in. She signed rapidly, playing deaf and confused. The vampire laughed. Oh, I know you can hear me, spy. His Majesty might be fooled by your act, but I've been hunting humans for 2 centuries. I can smell deception. He moved closer, and Marianne caught the scent of old blood. Question is, what are you really doing here? Are you Konstantin's pet project, or are you playing him for a fool? Neither, Marianne said quietly, abandoning the pretense. I'm trying to prevent a war, by spying for the VIA, by giving them false information that buys time for negotiation. The vampire studied her with narrow eyes. You actually believe that will work? That the humans will negotiate in good faith? I believe it's worth trying. Either you're a fool or you've actually started to care what happens to us bloodsuckers. He circled her like a predator. I'm Vasil, by the way, captain of the King's Guard. It's my job to protect Konstantin from threats, internal and external. I'm not a threat to him. That remains to be seen. Vasil stopped directly in front of her. Here's what's going to happen, little spy. You're going to continue your arrangement with the king. You're going to feed false information to your VIA handlers. And I'm going to watch you every second to make sure you don't slip a knife between his ribs. If I even suspect you're betraying him, I'll kill you slowly enough to make you beg for death. Are we clear, Crystal? Marianne said, meeting his gaze without flinching. To her surprise, Vasil grinned. Good. I like you. You've got spine. Just make sure you keep using it to protect our king instead of plotting against him. He melted back into the shadows, leaving Marianne alone in the hallway with her racing heart and tangled thoughts. She'd entered a world far more dangerous than she'd imagined. A world where vampire politics and human fear were racing toward a collision that could destroy everything. And somehow, impossibly, she was starting to care about the monsters she was supposed to help eliminate. Worse, she was starting to care about their king. The following weeks blurred together in a strange double life. By day, Marianne played the deaf servant, invisible and silent as she moved through the mansion. By night, she sat with Konstantin in his study, learning the intricate dance of vampire diplomacy while feeding carefully crafted misinformation to the Via. The agency was growing impatient. They wanted details about the winter court strike, wanted to know why their intelligence suggested Konstantin was consolidating forces. Marianne deflected, delayed, provided just enough information to keep them satisfied without revealing anything that would put Konstantin's people at risk. She was in too deep. She knew it. Every day that passed made it harder to remember which side she was supposed to be on. "You're troubled," Konstantin observed one evening. They'd finished their usual briefing, but Marianne hadn't moved to leave. "What's wrong?" "Everything," Marianne admitted. "I came here with clear orders and a clear purpose. Now I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I don't know who the enemy is supposed to be." Konstantin set down the document he'd been reading. "The enemy is ignorance, fear, the refusal to see another's perspective. Not humans, not vampires. Just the ugliness both our peoples carry. That's very philosophical for someone who could kill me without breaking a sweat. I could, but I won't." He stood and moved to the window, pulling back the heavy curtain to reveal the city lights beyond. "Do you know what I see when I look at your world, Marianne? Beauty, chaos, life burning so bright and fast it takes my breath away. Humans create and destroy and love and hate with an intensity I lost centuries ago. You fascinate me, all of you." Marianne joined him at the window, drawn by something in his voice. "Is that why you want peace? Because you find us fascinating?" "I want peace because the alternative is watching your cities burn and your people die in a war they didn't start and can't win." Konstantin turned to face her. "The Via thinks they're protecting humanity by hunting vampires. They don't understand that if they succeed in provoking us, if they force us into open conflict, humanity will lose. We're stronger, faster, harder to kill. The only reason we've remained hidden is because we choose to. Force our hand and that choice disappears. You're saying you'd win a war between our peoples. I'm saying there would be no winners, only survivors and corpses." His pale eyes reflected the city lights, making them seem almost alive. "I've seen enough death, Marianne. I don't want to see yours." The confession was soft, almost tender, and it hit Marianne like a physical blow. When had this stopped being an assignment? When had she started seeing him not as the vampire king but as Konstantin, brilliant, lonely, carrying the weight of centuries on his shoulders? "I don't want to see yours either," she whispered. Konstantin reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face with one pale hand. His touch was cool, gentle, impossibly careful. "You're in danger," he said quietly. "The longer you stay here, the more you know, the less likely the Via will let you simply walk away. They'll debrief you, scan for compulsion, dig through every memory. When they realize you've been compromised, that you've started to sympathize with us, they'll kill you, Marianne. Not immediately, not obviously, but you'll disappear, an accident, a training incident, one more casualty in their secret war." Fear crawled down Marianne's spine because she knew he was right. The Via didn't tolerate divided loyalties. "What are you suggesting?" "Stay here, not as my spy, not as their agent. Just stay. Let me protect you." "You mean defect? Abandon everything I know, everyone I care about?" Marianne pulled away from his touch, her mind reeling. "I can't. My sister can be brought here, protected. I have resources the Via can't match." "As what? A prisoner in a vampire king's mansion?" "As a guest. As family, if you choose." Konstantin's voice was urgent now, desperate in a way she'd never heard from him. "I know this is sudden. I know you have no reason to trust me beyond what I've shown you these past weeks. But Marianne, I can't let you walk back into their hands knowing what they'll do to you." "I won't." "Why do you care?" The question burst out of her. "I'm human. I'm nothing to you. Why does it matter what happens to me?" "Because you see me." The words echoed through the study. "Because in all my centuries of existence, you're the first person who's looked past the monster and seen the man. Because when you walk into this room, I remember what it was like to be alive. Because he stopped, visibly gathering himself. Because you matter to me, more than is wise, more than is safe." Marianne's heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane. She'd known him less than a month. He was a vampire, a king, a creature who'd lived longer than her entire family tree. But standing here, looking into those pale eyes, she couldn't deny what she felt. "I can't make this decision right now," she said finally. "I need time. I need to think. Time is a luxury we may not have. The Elder Council meets in 3 days. After that, events will move quickly." Konstantin stepped back, giving her space. "But I understand. This is your life, your choice."
"I won't take that from you."
Marianne nodded and fled the study, her thoughts in chaos. She made it to her room and collapsed on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Everything was spiraling out of control. She'd entered this assignment knowing exactly who she was and what she stood for. Now she wasn't sure of anything except the dangerous, impossible feelings growing in her chest every time she looked at Konstantin. Her phone buzzed. A message from the Via. Need full intelligence report. Upload everything. Strike timeline moved up. Extraction in 48 hours. Marianne's blood ran cold. 48 hours. 2 days. And they'd pull her out of the mansion, debrief her, discover everything. If Konstantin was right about their methods, she'd never leave that debriefing room alive. But if she stayed, if she chose him over everything she'd known, what did that make her? A traitor? A defector? Or just someone trying to survive? She thought about Madison, her little sister who believed Marianne worked for a boring government data entry department. Madison, who was finishing college, planning a normal life, completely unaware of the shadow war happening around her. Could Marianne really uproot her, drag her into this world of vampires and blood and ancient politics? Could she afford not to, if staying with the Via meant dying? Marianne pulled out her laptop and began typing a response to the Via. Her fingers trembled on the keys as she made the choice that would define everything that came after. Compromised. Need emergency extraction immediately. King knows about winter court strike. Location burned. She hit send before she could second-guess herself, then grabbed the few possessions she couldn't bear to leave and ran, not toward the exit, toward Konstantin's chambers. She burst through his door without knocking, breathing hard. Konstantin looked up from his desk, surprise flashing across his face. "I sent a message to the Via," Marianne gasped. "Told them I was compromised. They'll come for me. Tonight, probably. I'm sorry, I didn't know what else to do. Konstantin was across the room in an instant, pulling her against his chest. "Breathe, slow down. Tell me exactly what you said." Marianne repeated the message, feeling his arms tighten around her. He was solid and cool and impossibly real, and some part of her that had been terrified finally started to calm. "All right," Konstantin said quietly. "All right, we can work with this." Vasil, the scarred vampire, appeared in the doorway so quickly he must have been standing guard outside. "My king, lockdown protocol. The Via knows we've turned their agent. They'll come hard and fast." Konstantin's voice was commanding now, every inch the king. "I want every entrance secured, every vampire on alert, and I want a team ready to extract Marianne's sister from her college dormitory within the hour. Consider it done." Vasil vanished as quickly as he'd appeared. Marianne pulled back enough to look up at Konstantin's face. "You're really going to protect Madison? Even though I've probably just brought the Via down on your head? I told you I would keep her safe. I keep my promises." Konstantin's hand came up to cup her face again. "Besides, you made your choice. You chose us, chose me. The least I can do is ensure you don't regret it." "I already regret it," Marianne said, but she was smiling through the fear. "This is insane. Everything about this is insane. Welcome to vampire politics. It only gets more complicated from here." Konstantin's thumb brushed her cheekbone. "I need to prepare the mansion's defenses. Will you stay in this room? You'll be safest here." Marianne nodded. Konstantin started to pull away, but she caught his hand. "Wait, before you go, I need to know something. Anything. When this is over, when the Via is dealt with and Madison is safe and we've survived whatever comes next. What happens to me? What am I to you?" Konstantin was quiet for a moment, his pale eyes searching her face. "What do you want to be?" "I don't know. Everything's happened so fast, but I know I don't want to be just another human under your protection. I don't want to be a charity case or a political asset or..." He kissed her. It was soft and careful and achingly gentle, nothing like the monster the Via had warned her about. His lips were cool against hers, his hand cradling her face like she was something precious and fragile. Marianne melted into it, her hands fisting in his shirt as 500 years of loneliness met 3 years of lies, and they both found something real. When they finally broke apart, Konstantin was smiling. "Does that answer your question?" "It's a start," Marianne breathed. "Good, because I intend to spend a considerable amount of time expanding on that answer once we've dealt with your former employers." He pressed a quick kiss to her forehead. "Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone but me or Vasil. I'll return as soon as I can." Then he was gone, moving with that supernatural speed, and Marianne was alone in the Vampire King's chamber waiting for war. She didn't have to wait long. The attack came an hour later. Marianne heard it even through the heavy door's gunfire, shouting, the sounds of combat echoing through the mansion. She pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering, as the building shook with violence. A scream cut through the chaos. "Human." One of the servants. Marianne's hands clenched into fists. People were dying out there. People who'd done nothing except work in the wrong house. She couldn't just hide while they fell. Against every instruction Konstantin had given her, Marianne grabbed a heavy candlestick from his desk and crept toward the door. The hallway beyond was a nightmare. Bodies lay scattered on the marble floor, humans and vampires both. The Via had brought military-grade weapons, bullets that must have been specially designed to harm vampires because they were working. 3 of Konstantin's people lay motionless, pale skin turning gray as death finally claimed them. But the vampires were fighting back with terrifying efficiency. Marianne watched Vasil tear through 2 Via agents with his bare hands, moving faster than bullets. Blood splattered the walls, the floors, the priceless artwork. This was the war Konstantin had tried to prevent. This was what happened when their two worlds collided. Marianne ran through the chaos, heading for the servants' quarters. If she could get them out, get them to safety. An agent stepped into her path, gun raised. "Marianne Spencer, you're coming with us." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Marianne said, raising the candlestick. The agent's finger tightened on the trigger. He never got the shot off. Konstantin appeared between them like a pale ghost, moving so fast Marianne barely saw him. One moment the agent was standing. The next he was crumpled on the floor, unconscious or dead. Marianne couldn't tell. "I told you to stay in my chambers," Konstantin said, and there was real anger in his voice now. "People are dying because of me. I couldn't just hide. People are dying because the Via decided to violate the Bloodright Accords by attacking a vampire residence. This isn't your fault." Konstantin grabbed her hand. "Come on. We need to get you to the safe room before—" An explosion rocked the mansion. Marianne and Konstantin were thrown against the wall. Debris rained down as part of the ceiling collapsed. Through the smoke and dust, Marianne could see Via agents pouring through the breach, heavily armed and armored. "They brought military support," Konstantin said, disbelief coloring his voice. "They're not even trying to hide this. They want open war." "Then let's make sure they regret it," Vasil growled, appearing at his king's side. Blood stained his leather jacket, but his eyes were bright with battle fury. "My king, the Elder Council has been contacted. They're sending reinforcements. We just need to hold out until another explosion. This one closer." The Via was destroying the mansion, bringing it down around them. Centuries of history, priceless artifacts, all of it collapsing into rubble. "Get Marianne to the underground passages," Konstantin commanded. "I'll hold them here. Like hell you will," Vasil snapped. "You're the king. The bloodlines need you alive. I'll hold. You run, Vasil." "That's an order, my king. Now go!" Konstantin's face contorted with emotion, grief, rage, helplessness. But he nodded and pulled Marianne toward a hidden panel in the wall. It swung open to reveal a narrow staircase descending into darkness. They were halfway down when Marianne heard Vasil's battle cry cut short. She looked back in time to see the scarred vampire fall, overwhelmed by Via agents. Konstantin faltered on the stairs, and Marianne knew he'd heard it too. One of his people, his friend, dying to buy them time. "Keep moving," she urged, pulling him forward. "Don't let his sacrifice be meaningless." They ran through tunnels that seemed to stretch forever, ancient passages carved beneath the mansion. Behind them, the sounds of battle faded, replaced by the ominous rumble of the building collapsing. Finally, they emerged into an underground chamber lit by emergency lights. A dozen vampires waited there, pale faces tense with fear and anger. And standing among them, looking terrified but unharmed, was Madison. "Marianne!" Her sister ran forward, throwing her arms around Marianne's neck. "What's happening? These people came to my dorm, said you were in danger, brought me here, and then everything started exploding." "I know. I'm sorry. I'll explain everything. I promise." Marianne held her sister tight, relief flooding through her. "You're okay. That's all that matters. The mansion?" one of the vampires asked Konstantin, lost. "The Via brought military support. They're not hiding anymore." Konstantin's voice was hollow. "Vasil?" Silence answered him. Marianne watched emotions flicker across his face, grief, rage, determination. Then he straightened, becoming every inch the king once more. "We evacuate to the Winter Court. Send word to the Elder Council. The Via has violated the Bloodright Accords through military action against a vampire residence. This is an act of war." His pale eyes swept the assembled vampires. "Gather what supplies you can. We leave in 10 minutes. The vampires scattered to obey. Konstantin turned to Marianne, his expression softening slightly. "Your sister will be protected. You have my word, I know." Marianne reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I'm sorry about Vasil, about all of this. War has a cost. He knew that. We all do." Konstantin squeezed her hand gently. "But we survive, we endure, and we make sure their sacrifice means something." Madison was staring at them, at their joined hands, with wide eyes. "Marianne, who is this? What's going on?" "Madison, this is Konstantin. He's the vampire king, and I think I'm in love with him." The words hung in the air. Konstantin's eyes widened fractionally, surprise and something that looked like joy flashing across his face. "You think?" he asked softly. "I know," Marianne amended. "I know I am. Even though it's insane and impossible and probably going to get us both killed." "Vampires?" Madison's voice rose. "You're in love with a vampire, Marianne? Have you lost your mind?" "Probably," Marianne admitted. "But it's too late to go back now." Konstantin pulled her close, pressing his forehead against hers. "For what it's worth, the feeling is entirely mutual, insane, impossible, and all." "Okay, I'm going to need a much longer explanation," Madison said. "But first, can someone please tell me if we're safe?" "Safe is relative," Konstantin said, releasing Marianne reluctantly. "But you're under my protection now, both of you. The Via will hunt you as defectors, but they'll have to go through every vampire in the Eastern Territories to reach you." "That's somewhat comforting." Madison looked between them. Marianne, please tell me you know what you're doing. Not even a little bit, Marianne said honestly. But I trust him, and I need you to trust me. Madison was quiet for a long moment, studying her sister's face. Then she sighed. You're serious about this, about him? More serious than I've ever been about anything. Then I guess I'm meeting my future vampire brother-in-law. This is so weird. Madison held out her hand to Konstantin. Marianne Spencer. I'm pre-law, I like cats, and if you hurt my sister, I will find a way to make you regret it, even if you are an immortal king. Konstantin's lips twitched into what might have been a smile. Konstantin Draevor. I'm 500 years old, I've ruled the Eastern Territories for 3 centuries, and I give you my word that your sister's safety matters to me more than my own. Good enough for now. Madison lowered her hand. So what happens next? Next we go to war, Konstantin said grimly. The Via has forced our hand. The Elder Council will have no choice but to authorize retaliation. Unless what? Marianne asked. Unless we can prove to the human governments that the Via has been operating outside their authority. That this attack was unsanctioned, a rogue operation by an agency that's grown too powerful. Konstantin's eyes gleamed with new purpose. If we can turn human leadership against the Via, expose their violations of the Bloodright Accords, we might still avoid all-out war. You need evidence, Marianne said, understanding dawning. Evidence that the Via has been concealing information, manipulating intelligence, conducting unauthorized military operations. Do you have access to such evidence? Marianne thought about the 3 years she'd spent with the agency, the operations she'd assisted with, the files she'd seen. I might, if we can access their servers. That's insane, Madison said. You want to hack the Via? They'll kill you. They already want to kill us, Marianne pointed out. At least this way we'd be doing something useful. Konstantin studied her face. This would be dangerous, more dangerous than anything I've asked of you so far. Everything about this situation is dangerous, but if there's a chance to stop the war, to save lives on both sides. Marianne straightened her shoulders. I have to try. Then we try together. Konstantin turned to his people. Change of plans, we're not evacuating to the Winter Court yet. First, we're going to break into the Via headquarters and steal the evidence that will bring them down. One of the vampires, a woman with silver-white hair and ancient eyes, stepped forward. My king, that's suicide. The Via building is a fortress, so was my mansion, and they breached it in under an hour. We need to hit them before they can consolidate their forces, while they still think we're on the defensive. Konstantin's voice rang with authority. Gather the strike team. We move in 2 hours. The vampires dispersed again, moving with urgent purpose. Madison grabbed Marianne's arm. This is crazy, she whispered. You know that, right? A month ago you had a normal life. Now you're planning to attack a government agency with a vampire army. I know. But Madison, if we don't stop this, thousands of people will die. Human and vampire both. I can't live with that. And if you die trying to stop it, then at least I'll die knowing I tried to do the right thing. Marianne hugged her sister tight. I need you to stay here, where it's safe, please. Like hell, you're my sister. I'm not letting you walk into danger alone. She won't be alone, Konstantin said quietly. She'll have me, and I promise you, Madison, I will protect her with my life. Madison looked at him for a long moment. You really love her, don't you? More than I thought possible, Konstantin admitted. More than is wise for a king who's supposed to put his people first. But I can't help it. Your sister has become the most important thing in my world. Okay then. Madison released Marianne. But I'm coming with you. I'm not much of a fighter, but I can hack systems. If you need to access Via servers, you'll need someone who knows their way around security protocols. Absolutely not, Marianne said. Actually, she's right, Konstantin interjected. We'll need technical support. And frankly, keeping her here without us wouldn't be much safer. The Via knows about her. If they find this location, they'll come for her. Marianne wanted to argue, but she couldn't deny the logic. Fine. But you stay close to me. Deal. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Konstantin's vampires armed themselves with weapons, both ancient and modern swords that gleamed with supernatural sharpness alongside guns loaded with armor-piercing rounds. They planned their assault with military precision, mapping out the Via headquarters from intelligence Konstantin's spies had gathered over the years. Marianne found herself being fitted with body armor, given weapons training by vampires who'd been soldiers before she was born. It was surreal, standing in an underground chamber, learning to handle a gun while her sister argued with a 500-year-old vampire king about the best approach to bypass digital security. You're sure about this? Konstantin asked, finding Marianne alone for a moment before they departed. Once we attack the Via, there's no going back. You'll be a fugitive, hunted by your own government. I was a fugitive the moment I sent that message warning you, Marianne said. At least this way I'm choosing what I'm fighting for. Konstantin pulled her close and she went willingly, resting her head against his chest. No heartbeat. The absence still startled her sometimes, a reminder of how different he was. how impossible this whole situation was. When this is over, he said quietly, I want to show you the world I know. The hidden places where vampires gather, the old cities beneath the new. I want to introduce you to the Elder Council properly, not as my spy, but as my— He paused. What should I call you? My consort? My beloved? How about just Marianne? She pulled back to smile at him. We can figure out the fancy titles later. If there is a later, there will be. I didn't wait 5 centuries to find you just to lose you to a rogue government agency. Konstantin kissed her softly. Stay close to me during the assault. Please, I will. I promise. They gathered in the underground chamber 20 vampires, 2 humans, and enough weapons to start a small war, which Marianne reflected was exactly what they were doing. Konstantin stood before them, pale and regal even in tactical gear. The Via believes they can terrorize us into submission. They believe we'll scatter and hide like we have for centuries. Tonight we show them they're wrong. Tonight we fight back, not for conquest, not for revenge, but for the right to exist, for the possibility of peace, for a future where our peoples can coexist without fear. His pale eyes swept the assembled group. Some of us may not survive this night, but those who do will remember that we stood together, human and vampire, united against those who would see us destroyed. A cheer went up from the vampires, fierce and proud. Madison grabbed Marianne's hand, squeezing tight. Ready? She whispered. Not even close, Marianne admitted. But let's do this anyway. They emerged from the tunnels into the city night. The Via headquarters loomed before them, a sleek modern building that looked innocuous from the outside. Marianne knew better. Inside those walls were enough weapons and trained agents to fight a small army. Good thing they'd brought one. Konstantin's people moved like shadows, scaling the building's walls with supernatural agility. Marianne and Madison went in through the parking garage with 3 vampire escorts, heading for the server room in the basement. They made it past the first security checkpoint before the alarms went off. So much for stealth, Madison muttered, her fingers flying over her laptop as she tried to override the security systems. We knew this was a long shot, Marianne said, gun raised as footsteps echoed through the parking structure. How long do you need? 5 minutes. Maybe 10 if their encryption is as good as I think it is. You've got 3. Make it work. VI agents poured into the parking garage. The vampires with them engaged immediately, moving with terrifying speed and precision. Marianne fired her weapon, providing cover as Madison worked. Above them, through the ceiling, Marianne could hear the sounds of battle. Konstantin's main force must have breached the upper floors. The Via was being attacked from 2 directions, their attention split. Got it, Madison crowed. I'm in their mainframe. Downloading everything: personnel files, operation logs, financial records. This is going to take a few minutes. We don't have a few minutes, one of their vampire escorts said, dispatching another agent with brutal efficiency. They're going to overwhelm us. Then we hold, Marianne said grimly. They held. It was the longest 5 minutes of Marianne's life. The vampires fought with supernatural skill, but the Via agents kept coming, wave after wave. Bullets tore through the air. Blood splattered on concrete. One of their escorts fell, then another. Madison, please tell me you're almost done, Marianne shouted over the gunfire. Doubting now. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10. The last vampire escort fell, leaving Marianne and Madison alone against half a dozen agents. Marianne raised her gun. Knowing it wouldn't be enough, the agents leveled their weapons. And then Konstantin was there, moving faster than thought, a pale blur of death and fury. He tore through the agents like paper, his face twisted into something inhuman and terrible and beautiful. Got it. Madison yanked the cable from the server. I have everything. Then we're leaving now. Konstantin grabbed them both, one arm around each, and ran. They moved through the building in a nightmare blur, Konstantin carrying them at speeds no human could match. Behind them, the Via headquarters erupted into chaos as the vampire strike team fought their way out. They burst from the building into the night air just as explosions rocked the structure. Someone had planted charges, whether Via or vampire, Marianne couldn't tell. The building began to collapse, taking its secrets and its weapons down into rubble. Konstantin didn't stop running until they were 3 blocks away, finally setting Marianne and Madison down in an alley. Is everyone out? Marianne gasped. Most of us. Konstantin's face was grim. We lost 7. The Via lost more. But that's no comfort. We got the data, Madison said, holding up the hard drive. Everything they've been hiding. Operations, budgets, kill orders, proof that they've been operating outside government oversight. Konstantin took the drive carefully. Then their deaths weren't meaningless. This could end the war before it truly begins. Sirens wailed in the distance. The human authorities responding to the attack. Time to go. They regrouped at a safe house on the outskirts of the city, a warehouse Konstantin owned under a shell company. The surviving vampires gathered there, tending wounds and counting their losses. Madison immediately set up her laptop, diving into the data they'd stolen. Marianne watched her sister work, still trying to process everything that had happened. A month ago, her biggest concern had been passing her VIA training evaluations. Now she was a fugitive from her own government, in love with a vampire king, and possibly instrumental in preventing a war that could destroy millions. "Here," Madison said, pulling up files. "This is what we needed. Classified operations the VIA conducted without government approval. Evidence they've been manipulating intelligence to justify expanding their authority. Financial records showing they've been diverting taxpayer money into unauthorized weapons development. And oh God, what?" Konstantin moved to look over her shoulder. "Kill orders, hundreds of them. Not just vampires, humans too. Anyone they deemed compromised by vampire contact. People like Marianne, people like me." Madison's voice shook. "They were going to kill us." Marianne felt cold spreading through her chest. She'd known the VIA was ruthless, but seeing it documented so clinically made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "Can you package this for distribution?" Konstantin asked. "I can do better than that. I can send it directly to every major news outlet, every government oversight committee, every watchdog organization simultaneously. By morning, the VIA's dirty secrets will be front-page news." "Do it," Konstantin said without hesitation. Madison's fingers flew over the keyboard. "Sending now. And done. No taking it back. The world is about to learn exactly what the VIA has been doing." They waited through the rest of the night, watching news feeds as the story broke. At first, there was confusion, then outrage. By dawn, government officials were calling for investigations. The VIA's director was being summoned to testify before Congress. Their funding was being frozen pending review. "It's working," Marianne breathed, watching a senator denounce the VIA on live television. "They're turning on them. The humans are excellent at eating their own when scandal breaks," Konstantin observed. "Give it a week, and the VIA will be disbanded or so thoroughly reformed they'll be harmless." "What about the vampires?" Madison asked. "Will the Elder Council still authorize retaliation? I'll present this evidence to them. Show them that the VIA was a rogue organization, not representative of human leadership. If I can convince them to give the new regime a chance to establish proper diplomatic relations." Konstantin trailed off. "It's a long shot, but it's a chance." "When do you meet with them?" Marianne asked. "Tomorrow night, at the Winter Court." Konstantin turned to face her. "I want you there with me, both of you, as witnesses to what the VIA did, as proof that humans and vampires can work together." "The Elder Council is going to love that," Madison said dryly. "Bringing humans to a vampire gathering. They'll accept it or they'll challenge my authority. Either way, we're past the point of playing politics safely." Konstantin's pale eyes were determined. "Besides, I'm not leaving you two somewhere I can't protect you. Not with the VIA in chaos and possibly looking for scapegoats." He had a point. The next few days would be dangerous as the agency collapsed and desperate agents looked for someone to blame. "All right," Marianne said. "We'll come with you, though I have no idea how to act at a vampire court. Just stay close to me and let me handle the diplomacy." Konstantin moved to the window, watching the sunrise through the gaps in the warehouse boards. "After tomorrow, everything changes. Either we forge a new peace or we watch our peoples destroy each other. There's no middle ground left." Marianne joined him at the window, slipping her hand into his. "Whatever happens, we face it together." "Together," Konstantin agreed softly. The Winter Court was nothing like Marianne had imagined. They traveled there by private car, driving through the night to reach a location deep in the mountains. The entrance was hidden behind a waterfall, a cave system that descended into the earth, and at the bottom, carved from living stone over thousands of years, was a palace. It was ancient and beautiful and terrifying all at once. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, held up by columns carved with intricate patterns. Torches burned with blue flame, casting strange shadows. And everywhere vampires. They were gathered in the great hall, hundreds of them, representatives from every bloodline in the Eastern Territories. White skin, white hair, pale eyes that tracked Marianne and Madison's every movement. The humans were obvious anomalies here, and from the whispers that rippled through the crowd, not welcome ones. Konstantin led them to the center of the hall, his head high and proud. He was dressed in formal attire now, all black with silver accents, looking every inch the king. Marianne and Madison flanked him, trying not to show their terror. At the far end of the hall sat 7 thrones, and on those thrones sat the Elder Council. They were ancient in ways Marianne couldn't quite process. Their faces were ageless, but their eyes held millennia. They watched Konstantin approach with expressions that gave nothing away. "Lord Draevor," the center elder spoke, her voice like wind through dead trees. "You requested this emergency session. You bring humans to our sacred gathering. Explain yourself." "Honored elders." Konstantin bowed, a gesture of respect but not submission. "I bring evidence that the VIA has violated the Bloodright Accords through unauthorized military action. and I bring witnesses to their crimes, humans who can testify to the agency's corruption and help us forge new diplomatic relations with the human governments. The humans attacked your residence, killed our people, and you propose negotiation? Another elder, male, his face carved with disapproval. This is weakness. This is wisdom, Konstantin countered. The Via was a rogue element operating outside their government's control. They've been exposed and are being dismantled as we speak. The human leadership is open to establishing proper diplomatic channels for the first time in centuries. We can have the peace we've sought, or we can throw it away for vengeance against an enemy that no longer exists. You ask us to trust the humans? After they've hunted us for generations? I ask you to trust the evidence. Konstantin gestured, and Madison stepped forward, setting up her laptop on a table before the council. See for yourselves what the Via has done, not just to vampires but to their own people. See the opportunity their exposure creates. The elders leaned forward, watching as Madison displayed the stolen files. Marianne could see calculation in their ancient eyes, weighing possibilities. And these humans? The center elder asked, looking at Marianne and Madison. Why should we trust their testimony? Because one of them was willing to die rather than continue serving an organization built on lies, Konstantin said quietly. Because she chose us over her own people when she saw the truth. Because she's proven herself loyal even when it cost her everything. He reached out and took Marianne's hand, pulling her forward to stand beside him. And because I love her, he continued. And the hall erupted in shocked whispers. Because in 500 years of existence, she's the first person who's made me believe that peace between our peoples is possible. Not just strategically advantageous, but genuinely possible. The center elder's eyes narrowed. You would tie yourself to a human? A mortal who will age and die while you endure? I would, I have. Konstantin's grip on Marianne's hand tightened. And if the council disapproves, they're welcome to challenge my rule. But they won't change my decision. Silence fell over the great hall. Marianne's heart hammered as she realized what Konstantin had just done, staked his throne, his authority, everything he'd built for centuries, on his relationship with her. The elders conferred in whispers too quiet for human ears. Finally, the center elder spoke. The evidence is compelling. The Via's exposure does create opportunity. She turned her ancient gaze to Marianne. Human child, speak. Do you truly believe your people would negotiate in good faith? Or is this another trap? Marianne took a deep breath. Honored elder, I can't speak for all humanity. But I can tell you that most humans don't even know vampires exist. The Via kept that secret deliberately to maintain their power. Now that the truth is coming out, now that people are learning what the Via did in their name, there's a chance for something new. A chance to build understanding instead of continuing a war most humans don't even know they're fighting. Pretty words. But what of you? What do you gain from this peace? A future, Marianne said simply. With someone I love, in a world where I don't have to choose between my humanity and my heart. That's all I want. That's all any of us should want. The elder studied her for a long moment. Then incredibly she smiled. You have courage, human child, and perhaps wisdom beyond your years. She looked at Konstantin. Very well, the council agrees to delay retaliation. We will open diplomatic channels with the human governments and see if this peace you speak of is possible. But Lord Draevor? Yes, honored elder. If this fails, if the humans betray us again, the responsibility falls on you. You've tied your fate to theirs. Remember that. I will never forget it, Konstantin said solemnly. The council session ended and the gathered vampires began to disperse. Many cast curious glances at Marianne and Madison as they passed. Some looked hostile. Others seemed almost hopeful. That went better than I expected, Madison whispered. I honestly thought we might die. The night's not over yet, Marianne murmured back. But Konstantin was smiling as he led them from the great hall. You did well, both of you. The elders rarely reverse their positions once they've decided on war. Your testimony made the difference. What happens now? Marianne asked. Now we wait and see if the human governments are as open to negotiation as we hope. The council has agreed to send ambassadors to meet with your leadership. If those meetings go well, we draft a new treaty. If they don't. Konstantin's expression darkened. We prepare for war. No pressure then, Madison said weakly. They were given chambers in the Winter Court Palace, luxurious rooms carved from stone and decorated with treasures from across the centuries. Marianne tried to rest, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Everything hung in the balance. The decisions made in the next few weeks would determine whether their peoples moved toward peace or mutual destruction. Konstantin found her on the balcony overlooking the underground cavern, unable to sleep. You should rest, he said gently, wrapping his arms around her from behind. The negotiations will be exhausting. I keep thinking about what the elder said, about me being mortal while you endure. Marianne leaned back against his chest. I'll age, I'll die. You'll still be here, looking exactly the same, ruling your territories while I'm dust. How does that work? Konstantin was quiet for a moment. There are ways, dangerous ways, but possible. Some humans have been turned with their consent, made vampire to stay with the ones they love. Is that what you want? To turn me? I want you to choose, whatever that choice is." His arms tightened around her. "I've lived 500 years, Marianne. I can wait 50 more for your natural lifetime, treasuring every moment we have. Or if you wanted immortality, wanted to walk through the centuries with me, I would give you that gift, but only if it's truly what you want, never because you feel obligated." Marianne turned in his arms to face him. "I don't know what I want yet. This is all so new, so overwhelming. Can we just take it one day at a time? Figure out the immortality question after we've resolved the potential war?" Konstantin's laugh was soft and genuine, a practical approach. "Very well, one crisis at a time." He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promise. Marianne melted into it, letting herself forget about treaties and councils and world-changing decisions. For this moment there was just the two of them, a human and a vampire, defying every rule and expectation to be together. The negotiations took weeks. Human governments, once they got over their shock at discovering vampires were real, were surprisingly open to diplomatic relations. The Via's exposure had made them cautious, eager to prove they weren't following the same corrupt path. Ambassadors met with the Elder Council. Terms were discussed, boundaries were drawn. Marianne served as a mediator, her unique position as Konstantin's beloved and a former Via agent making her valuable to both sides. Madison helped too, using her technical skills to establish secure communication channels and verify that neither side was planning betrayal. It was exhausting work. Some days Marianne despaired that they'd ever find common ground. But slowly, painfully, a new treaty began to take shape. The blood right accords were officially dissolved and replaced with the covenant of coexistence. Vampires would have recognized territories and legal rights. Humans would have protections against unauthorized turning or feeding. Both sides would establish oversight committees to prevent abuses. And most importantly, both sides agreed to pursue diplomatic solutions before military ones. It wasn't perfect. There were compromises that satisfied no one and loopholes that would need to be addressed. But it was a start, a foundation to build on. The treaty was signed at the Winter Court 3 months after the Via headquarters fell. Human diplomats and vampire elders put their names to the document, witnessed by hundreds of both species. Marianne stood beside Konstantin as he signed for the Eastern Territories, his elegant script flowing across the page. When it was done, when the treaty was official, the hall erupted in cautious celebration. "We did it," Marianne breathed. "We actually did it," Konstantin corrected. "This peace exists because you were brave enough to choose it, because you saw beyond the lies you'd been taught and gave us a chance." "I had help," Marianne said, smiling up at him. "From a very patient vampire king who could have killed me that first night but chose mercy instead. Best decision I ever made." Konstantin pulled her close, heedless of the watching crowd. "Though I'll admit, when you walked into my chamber with that hidden camera, I never imagined it would lead to this. To peace, to love." Marianne kissed him, there in front of the assembled leaders of two species, making their relationship undeniably public and official. When they broke apart, she found Madison watching them with a grin. "You two are disgustingly cute," her sister said. "Also, I got a job offer. The new Vampire Relations Department wants me to help design their digital security systems. Apparently my illegal hacking impressed them." "Are you going to take it?" Marianne asked. "Are you kidding? I get to work on cutting-edge security for an organization that deals with vampires? This is the coolest job opportunity ever." Madison's grin widened. "Plus, it means I can stay close to you and make sure your vampire boyfriend keeps treating you right." "I appreciate the supervision," Konstantin said dryly. "Though I assure you Marianne's well-being is my highest priority." "Good, because she's the best person I know and she deserves to be happy." Madison hugged her sister tight. "I'm proud of you for everything you did, everything you risked." "Thank you," Marianne whispered, "for trusting me, for coming with me into this insanity. Always, that's what sisters do." The celebration continued long into the night. Marianne found herself introduced to vampire after vampire, all of them curious about the human who'd won their king's heart. Some were welcoming, others remained skeptical, but all of them were willing to give peace a chance. And that was enough. As the party wound down, Konstantin led Marianne to a quiet balcony overlooking the cavern. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Marianne's heart skipped. "Konstantin, it's not what you think, not yet." He opened the box to reveal a ring, silver, set with a pale blue stone that seemed to glow with inner light. "This is a moonstone enchanted by vampire magic. It won't make you immortal, but it will slow your aging. Give us more time together while you decide what you want your future to look like." Marianne stared at the ring, tears pricking her eyes. "You're giving me time. I'm giving you choice. Always choice." Konstantin took the ring from the box and held it up. "Wear this, and we'll have decades instead of years. Long enough to build something real, long enough to be sure." "I'm already sure," Marianne said softly. "But I'll wear it anyway, Because I want every moment with you I can have. Konstantin slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, the stone warm against her skin. I love you, he said. My brave, stubborn, beautiful spy. Thank you for pretending to be deaf. Thank you for hearing my secrets. Thank you for choosing me when you had every reason not to. I love you too, Marianne replied. My dangerous, protective, surprisingly romantic vampire king. Thank you for seeing past the agent to the person. Thank you for giving me a reason to hope for peace. Thank you for making me believe in the impossible. They stood together on the balcony, watching the celebration below, and for the first time in months, Marianne felt truly at peace. The war was over, the treaty was signed, her sister was safe, and she had found something she'd never expected in the shadows of the vampire court: love, real and deep and eternal. What are you thinking? Konstantin asked. That I came here to spy on you and instead I found home. Marianne leaned into his embrace. That's a much better ending than the Via planned for me. Agreed. Though I suspect our story is just beginning. Konstantin pressed a kiss to her temple. We have treaties to enforce, prejudices to overcome, a whole new world to build together. Sounds perfect. It sounds like work. That too, Marianne smiled. But we've already done the impossible. Everything else should be easy by comparison. It wasn't easy, of course. The months that followed brought challenges neither of them had anticipated. There were vampires who resented the new treaty and humans who feared the creatures they'd just learned existed. There were incidents and misunderstandings and tense moments where everything threatened to fall apart. But Marianne and Konstantin faced each crisis together, their partnership becoming a symbol of what the covenant of coexistence promised. They traveled to human cities and vampire courts, building bridges, answering questions, proving that cooperation was possible. Madison thrived in her new role, creating security systems that protected both species while building friendships that crossed the human-vampire divide. She became an advocate for integration, arguing that young vampires and humans should be educated together to build understanding from an early age. A year after the treaty was signed, Konstantin officially named Marianne as his consort, a position of honor in vampire society. The ceremony was attended by both human diplomats and vampire nobility, another symbol of the new world they were building. How does it feel? Madison asked as they prepared for the ceremony. Being officially royal vampire adjacent? Terrifying. Exciting. Right. Marianne adjusted the deep blue gown Konstantin had commissioned for her. A year ago I was terrified he'd kill me. Now I'm about to pledge my life to him in front of hundreds of witnesses. Life is strange, life is good, Madison corrected. You're happy. Genuinely, truly happy. I can see it in you. I am. Marianne met her sister's eyes in the mirror. Thank you for supporting me. For not thinking I was crazy when I fell in love with a vampire. Oh, I definitely thought you were crazy. I just love you enough to support your insanity. Madison hugged her carefully, mindful of the elaborate dress. Now go, your vampire king is waiting. The ceremony was beautiful, blending vampire tradition with human elements. Konstantin stood at the altar in formal attire, looking like something out of a fairy tale, dangerous and regal and heartbreakingly beautiful. His pale eyes found Marianne the moment she entered, and his expression softened into something that was purely him, purely real. Marianne walked down the aisle, her heart full to bursting. This was nothing like what she'd imagined her life would be. But it was perfect. It was hers. You came into my life as a spy, Konstantin said when she reached him, taking her hands in his. You were supposed to betray me. Instead, you saved me, saved us all. You showed me that peace was possible, that love could bridge any divide. You are my heart, Marianne Spencer, my hope for a better future, my reason to believe that 500 years of darkness was worth enduring to find you. Marianne's vision blurred with tears. You were supposed to be a monster, the enemy I was trained to destroy. Instead, you were the most honest person I'd ever met. You taught me to question what I'd been told, to see beyond easy answers. You protected me when you had every reason to kill me. You're my partner, Konstantin Draevor. My love, my future, however long or short it may be. They spoke the formal vows of vampire consort binding, words that had been used for thousands of years. But the emotion behind them was entirely their own, entirely real. When Konstantin kissed her, sealing the bond, the hall erupted in applause. Vampire and human voices raised together in celebration. So this is it, Marianne whispered against his lips. We're official. We've been official since the moment you chose me over the Via, Konstantin said. This is just making it formal. I like formal. Formal comes with a party and a beautiful dress. Formal also comes with responsibilities. You're consort to a vampire king now. That means late nights at diplomatic functions and navigating court politics. Still better than working for the Via, Marianne said cheerfully. They danced at the reception, human and vampire couples mixing freely on the dance floor. It was a sight that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Now it was becoming normal, natural even. Do you ever regret it? Konstantin asked as they swayed to the music. Giving up your human life, your career, everything you knew? Marianne considered the question seriously. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never taken that assignment. If I'd never walked into your mansion pretending to be deaf. But regret? No. Every choice I made led me here to you. To this moment I wouldn't change any of it because I'm keeping you. Konstantin spun her gently. For as long as you'll have me, that might be a very long time. This ring you gave me seems to be working. I haven't aged a day since you put it on. Vampire magic tends to be effective. Though if you ever want more permanent solutions, I'll let you know. Marianne smiled up at him. But for now I'm happy exactly as I am. Human, mortal, and completely in love with an immortal vampire king. The feeling, Konstantin said, pulling her close, is entirely mutual. They danced until dawn forced the vampires to retreat to shielded chambers. Marianne and Madison walked through the palace as the party wound down, still marveling at how much had changed. Do you think it will last? Madison asked. The peace, I mean. Can humans and vampires really coexist long term? I don't know, Marianne admitted. But we're going to try, and every day we succeed makes the next day easier. Eventually, maybe it won't even be remarkable anymore. Maybe kids will grow up in a world where vampires are just another part of society, and the fear and hatred will fade into history. That's a nice dream. It's more than a dream. It's what we're building. Marianne squeezed her sister's hand, one treaty at a time, one friendship at a time, one love story at a time. The years that followed proved her right. The covenant of coexistence held, strengthened by each successful negotiation, each peaceful resolution of conflict. The Vampire Relations Department grew, establishing protocols and protections that satisfied both species. Mixed vampire-human communities began to develop in major cities. There were still problems, still prejudice on both sides. But the trajectory was clear toward integration, toward understanding, toward peace. Marianne and Konstantin became symbols of that peace. Their relationship proof that the divide between species could be bridged. They traveled the world together, visiting vampire courts and human capitals, always advocating for cooperation over conflict. On their 5th anniversary as consort and king, Konstantin took Marianne to a private chamber in the Winter Court and presented her with a choice. I love you exactly as you are, he said, holding both her hands. If you want to remain human, age naturally, and spend your mortal lifetime with me, I will treasure every moment. But if you want immortality, if you want to walk through the centuries at my side, I would be honored to turn you, to make you vampire my equal in every way. Marianne had known this conversation was coming. She'd thought about it constantly over the past 5 years, weighing the costs and benefits of immortality. If you turn me, I'll outlive my sister, my friends, everyone I knew as a human. Yes, that's the cost of our existence. We endure while mortals fade. But I'd have you for centuries, for as long as we both survive. You would and I would have you, my love, my partner, my eternal companion. Marianne took a deep breath. Then do it. Turn me. Make me vampire. I want forever with you, Konstantin. I want to build this peace together for as long as it takes. You're sure? There's no reversing this. I've never been more sure of anything. Marianne smiled at him. Besides, someone needs to keep you honest for the next few centuries. Might as well be me. Konstantin laughed, joy and relief flooding his expression. Very well, but we do this properly, with the Elder Council's blessing and your sister's understanding. I won't have you turned in secret like some shameful thing. So they prepared. Madison was sad but understanding, promising to visit often and stay close for as long as her mortal life allowed. The Elder Council gave their blessing, pleased that their king had found happiness. Human diplomats acknowledged it as a symbol of trust, a human choosing to become vampire willingly, out of love rather than coercion. The transformation itself was painful but brief. Konstantin's bite, his blood the burning sensation as her human cells died and reformed into something new, something eternal. Marianne held tight to his hand through all of it, trusting him completely. When she woke 3 days later, the world had changed. Colors were sharper, sounds were clearer. She could hear heartbeats from rooms away, smell emotions on the air. And when she looked in the mirror, she saw pale skin, pale hair, eyes that glowed with inner light. She was vampire now, immortal, changed forever. How do you feel? Konstantin asked, watching her anxiously. Marianne tested her new strength, lifting a heavy chair with one hand. Strange, powerful, like myself but more. Is that normal? Very normal. You'll need time to adjust, to learn control. But you'll master it. You're brilliant and determined, and you have me to guide you. Forever, Marianne said, testing the word. We actually have forever now. We do, barring violence or accident. We could live for thousands of years together. The magnitude of it was overwhelming, but also thrilling. They had time now. Time to explore the world, to build their peace, to love without the shadow of mortality hanging over them. Marianne pulled Konstantin close, marveling at how different it felt now that they were equals in strength and speed. Thank you for waiting for me to be ready, for making it my choice. Always your choice, Konstantin murmured against her hair. That's what love is. Freedom, not obligation. They stood together in the chamber, Vampire King and his newly turned consort, and Marianne felt peace settle over her like a blanket. This was right. This was home. Madison visited the next day, still human but surrounded by vampire guards who'd become her friends over the years. So, she said, studying Marianne's new appearance. You're actually immortal now, that's wild. I know, still processing. Marianne hugged her sister carefully, mindful of her new strength. But this means we can work together for decades. You can build your department and I can help implement changes that will take generations to fully realize. Assuming I don't get turned too, Madison said thoughtfully. I've been thinking about it. Not now, but maybe eventually. When I've accomplished what I want to in my mortal life. The offer stands, Konstantin said. Any family of Marianne's is welcome in our court, in our world. They talked for hours, planning the future they would build together. The Vampire Relations Department was already making progress, integrating vampire and human institutions. With Marianne's new immortal perspective and Madison's continued innovation, they could accelerate that progress. The months after Marianne's transformation were challenging. She had to learn to control her new abilities, to feed without killing, to navigate vampire society as one of them rather than a protected human. But Konstantin was patient, teaching her everything he'd learned over 5 centuries. And slowly Marianne found her place, not just as the Vampire King's consort, but as a leader in her own right. She became an advocate for newly turned vampires, helping them adjust to their transformation. She worked with human governments to establish legal frameworks for vampire citizenship. She built bridges between old vampires who remembered the time before hiding and young ones who'd never known anything else. 20 years after the Covenant of Coexistence was signed, Marianne stood before the Elder Council and proposed a radical idea: a joint human-vampire university, where both species could study together, learn from each other, and build the next generation of cooperation. It was approved unanimously. 50 years after the treaty, the first human-vampire city was established, with integrated housing and mixed-species governance. Marianne served on its founding council, working alongside humans and vampires who'd never known the old divisions. 100 years after she'd walked into Konstantin's mansion pretending to be deaf, Marianne looked around at the world they'd built and marveled. There were still conflicts, still prejudices, but they were manageable now, addressed through dialogue rather than violence. Humans and vampires lived and worked together in most major cities. Mixed-species marriages were common. The fear and hatred that had nearly destroyed both peoples had faded into history. "We did it," she said to Konstantin one evening, standing on the balcony of their modernized mansion, the estate they'd rebuilt after the Via destroyed it a century ago. "We actually created lasting peace." "You did it," Konstantin corrected, as he always did. "You were the catalyst. The brave spy who chose love over loyalty to an organization built on lies. The deaf servant who heard all your secrets," Marianne added with a smile. "That's how this started, wasn't it? You spoke freely around me because you thought I couldn't hear. You revealed yourself in ways you'd never intended, and fell in love in the process." Konstantin pulled her close, a gesture that still made her heart race even after a century together. "Best mistake I ever made, speaking openly in front of you. Best assignment I ever failed," Marianne countered. They stood together, Vampire King and his consort, immortal partners who'd changed the world through their impossible love. Behind them lay a century of peace they'd built together. Before them stretched eternity, full of possibilities. Neither could have imagined that first night she'd walked into his chamber with a hidden camera and a mission to destroy him. "I love you," Marianne said, the words as true now as the first time she'd spoken them. "Thank you for seeing past the spy to the person. For giving me the chance to choose you." "I love you," Konstantin replied. "Thank you for choosing me. For staying when you could have run. For building this impossible future with me." They kissed as the sun set over the city, casting long shadows across the integrated neighborhoods below. Human and vampire lives intertwined, creating something neither species could have achieved alone. And in that moment, Marianne knew that every risk she'd taken, every lie she'd told, every impossible choice she'd made had been worth it. She'd come here to spy on a monster and found a partner instead. She'd pretended to be deaf and heard the secrets that changed everything. She'd fallen in love with the enemy and discovered that love could transform the world. It was the ending she'd never expected and the beginning she'd never stop being grateful for. Forever stretched before them, full of promise and hope and the certainty that whatever challenges came, they would face them together, vampire and former human, king and consort. Eternal partners in the peace they'd forged from the ashes of ancient war. It was, Marianne reflected, a far better story than anything the Via could have written, and it was all theirs.